Hi, everybody, and welcome to a special Ask the Mayor edition of Newsmakers TV. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, June 20th, 2025, longest day of the year, the official start of astronomical summer, also known as summer solstice. And happy solstice to those who celebrate. I'm very pleased and honored to welcome back to the program Santa Barbara Mayor Randy Rowse. Mayor, thanks for so much for joining us today. Happy solstice.
My pleasure. What else would I do during an astronomical phenomena?
And joining us in the conversation is Josh Molina, a man of many hats and host of the global smash hit podcast, Santa Barbara Talks. So, lots to talk about: new city budget and the new deficit, more controversy over the downtown homeless center, more of that blockbuster eight-story project at the Mission, and of course, the 2026 mayor's race. But before we jump in, I just want to level set because I just want to talk about the political moment uh, we're in, which is, of course, insane. There were a lot of people, over 10,000 from what I read in Josh's story at the No Kings rally, and lots of signs. But I just wanted to show our viewers the weirdest sign, what I considered to be the weirdest sign I saw. Um, and this is I've never done this technologically before, so just bear with me. So there it is, Randy Rowse, Trumpism in coastal camouflage. So I'm thinking, okay, who decided to go to the protest? And that was what they were going to say that day. I mean, I'm not going to ask you about who you voted for president, but I know from our conversations you're not a big Trump fan. What do you think when you see something like that?
Well, my first reaction was, wow, they spelled my name right. That's rather unusual. So that I
Did
always
they
appreciate
spell
that.
camouflage right though?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously we're dealing with somebody who's educated. But I don't know. I had to laugh. I just thought about is just such a I mean, I will admit that I've put on a couple of pounds, and I have actually I've altered my golf score before, so there may be something to it all. But I'm not sure what coastal camouflage is. If you're supposed to wear seaweed or what that actually means. Um, but it is
Maybe
interesting
you should
because
wear that in the solstice parade.
I might as well. But it's interesting because you have a chaos president. That's his whole MO in Washington. It's just in the middle of the night, Truth Social, and boom. I don't know how his staffers are just getting any sleep, or if they sleep at all, because he changed me. It's mercurial the way he changes from moment to moment. And I don't know, people try to figure out a strategy. I don't think there's a strategy. I think it's just an impetuous kind of, let's just keep everybody off guard and while I figure out what the heck I'm doing up here. So, but yeah, I'm also confused from time to time, but I'm not very good at social media, so that part I kind of I can't quite buy the
Uh,
comparison.
all right. Well, you take it with the value that it's worth, but in a, sort of a more serious thing, and I don't want to get all doom and gloom here, but you got into this, uh, you got into politics in 2010, appointed to the council, and of course did two terms and left, and inexplicably came back, and but I mean, just the atmosphere of what's going on. I mean, we see this guys going to the homes of state legislators in Minnesota and assassinating people. I mean, and the New York Times had a piece today about the upsurge, the spate of violence against public officials. This has got to be something you think about on your mind and so on. I mean, just share with us a moment. What do you think about what we're going through here?
Well, you can't blame the entire world atmosphere on Donald Trump. However, leadership does set the pace, and when you are working through chaos, when you don't have civility and decorum as part of your own MO, I think it trickles down pretty easily. So you get what we had on January 6th. You have talking about the Washington riots after the election. You have this. You have people like Holman, saying like, "I don't give a damn how people feel." things like people saying these things out loud, that seems to be permissive, and it takes all you need is somebody with a little touch of crazy to go, I'm legitimate. I'm going to go do this. And and I was in D.C. right having dinner right down the street from when those two kids were killed in front of the Israeli embassy, and you can't really tie those two necessarily together, but that's a bigger picture. But we really have come to a boiling point on so many levels, and the president doesn't seem to be able to. He doesn't not only does not take the temperature down, he seems to bring a little can of kerosene to the barbecue. And whatever you think about the man as a politician or his policies, that's not the kind of leadership this world needs right now. This world needs statesmanship. It needs calm. It needs reduced temperatures, and we're not getting it right now. I'm on so many levels: state, local, federal. It's just it's not happening.
Yeah. And how about personally? Do you think, is it something you think about? Gee, somebody's going to come up and hit me with a whipped cream pie or something. I mean, a thing, or do you think that Santa Barbara we're kind of immune from all this?
No, I've actually I've caught a couple elbows out on the street and whatnot. Nothing serious. But and it usually it's just something really stupid, like kind of like that sign. But no, it's been fine. But we do talk about security. We do have briefings. I'll put it this way: if there's ever a metal detector ever comes up on the budget, I'm probably voting yes. That's
Fair
what the
enough.
county's got it already. Yeah, it's a concern. I
All
mean,
right.
in the back of my head, I don't walk down the street thinking about that every moment, but
All right. All right. Well,
Randy,
very
I
nice.
wanted to, can I
Very
ask you a question?
pivot to the budget, but Joe, go ahead with your follow-up question first.
Just real quick, I was out covering the No Kings thing, and I did see Megan Harmon, Kristen Sneddon, Oscar Gutierrez. I'm sure there were others out there, but I did see them. Uh, were you there? Did you go? Any reason? Did you avoid it? What was yours? Where were you on that morning when there were,
where
at
was I?
least 10,000 people out there, Jerry?
I think had my lawyer present. No, I was actually down on the side of Pershing Park because I was doing both, just kind of the side thing. I didn't want to get in the middle of it. I didn't want to run into Josh Molina or Jerry Roberts there and have a microphone stuck in my face. And I also was going to drop by the Juneteenth thing as well, which was at Pershing Park. So I was very pleased. I was in touch with both Kellys, the city administrator and the police chief. The plan was to have a very a presence, but not a super visible presence. We just want to keep the temperature down. Our police people did a fabulous job of making sure people were safe, but not making a presence that felt like we were trying to tamp down some kind of a free speech thing. So I think it went as well as it possibly could have gone.
Yeah, we talked about that in a show last week, and I actually sent a note to the Chief Kelly because it really was a great job by the cops. I think I saw two cops the whole time, and then we had breakfast afterwards, and then it was like wow, the entire second Army Corps went by. They were obviously staged somewhere, but there was no presence, there was no provocation, there was nothing. It was
Yeah,
really
my daughter lives up on the east side, and they were walking down, and they saw all sorts of assets moving towards the beach, and they go, when we got there, we couldn't see anybody.
no,
So that was the point.
yeah.
That measured response, that keep it down, be there if you're needed, but don't be the show, don't be the story. And that's what our people are all about.
Yeah, well, that's what Josh and I feel. So we, as Josh mentioned, several of your colleagues were there. One of them said, was sort of grousing about you and said, it's going to be a 6-1 vote on the budget. In fact, it turned out to be a 4-3 vote on the budget with a couple of last minute surprises. Josh, frame an intelligent question about the budget, which I seem unable to be able to do here.
Well, Tuesday's meeting, Randy, was really odd because it was supposed to be a formal approval of pretty much what was decided the week before. But then the city staff presented this new slide, or at least it was new to me. I don't remember seeing it before, that showed the deficit growing significantly over the next few years. And sort of this put pause into those who were willing to support a $2 million pull from the reserves because that wasn't really talked about at all. What those reserve funds would do to the overall budget. And then there was the $100,000 wildlife assessment fee to pay the consultant, and that sort of added to that as well. So we had a situation where it was going to be sort of 6-1 with you dissenting to all of a sudden it went to 4-3. Eric Friedman, Mike Jordan. You couldn't pick the vote apart. You had to do the whole thing. It got very technical. But at the end of the day, you had a situation where you had a split vote on most of the budget, largely over this use of reserve funds to go to housing services. And so it was very weird up there, complicated. Whenever council tries to invent things from the dais and then ask staff to sort it out, you know you're going down a bad road because, and I think Harmon had mentioned that too, it's kind of said that to Jordan, why don't you send the questions beforehand? But what happened, Randy? Why was it a 4-3 vote? And I guess ultimately, why do a couple of or three council members, why couldn't they support it because of this, housing dedication?
So first of all, it's never a good idea to dip into reserves unless you have to. They're called emergency reserves for a reason, or contingency reserves. It's never good to plan for them. Affordable housing is a big priority for the city, but the city doesn't build into their natural budget, the general fund budget, to backfill, what the housing authority is doing or whatever. We did start an affordable housing trust fund along with the 115 trust fund for the paying down the pension obligations. And also we had another line item we put into homeless services, which could also be used for housing, but it's not strictly for, leveraging in a housing authority thing. Could be for Habitat for Humanity, could be for people self-help housing. It could be for a lot of different things. And it wasn't supposed to be burned down in one tranche. Well, as it turned out, there was a lot of push from CLUE and CAUSE and the tenants union and whatnot to move this direction, which captured four of my colleagues. Eric, in his deal making best, which he's usually pretty good at, thought he had something going at Finance Committee where he'd agree to do the $2 million for the first year, but not the second year, because as you saw on that slide, Josh, we had seen the slide before, but it has the deficit is actually going to be slightly the reserves are under more fire than before because expenses are going up faster than we thought, and revenues have dropped, particularly in sales tax. So there's the kind of that perfect storm, which is why you have reserves. In my career since 2010, I've gone through three big dips that we've gone into the reserves. And the last big one was after COVID, and ARPA backfilled that pretty much. And I'm not sure that ARPA funding is going to be coming out of this administration anytime soon if we go down again. Now you look at our main industry in this town is hospitality. And what's happening with hospitality? Well, somehow we managed to even, piss off Canadians. I don't know how you do that. I don't even know how you make a Canadian man. They're not coming, let alone half the rest of the world is not traveling to the United States. And so we're anticipating potentially as much as a 10% downturn in bed tax. That's, you don't know. A budget is a fluid thing. And it changes, every day, and you have to get it ready ahead of time. But my last point is this. The city administrator and the finance director work really hard for months on end to put together a budget. And yes, the $100,000 was kind of a late thing for the fire assessment program, but that was very much, favored by the neighbors. It will be paid back through their assessment fees. And so that fund will be paid back. Even as much as my colleagues say, well, we want to make sure we pay the reserves back, there is a zero plan for paying those reserves back. I don't know how we're going to do it, but I do know we've mortgaged our next few years of future.
Yeah. Randy, can you address, because what it comes down to, and it's going to come up in the mayor's race, is Randy doesn't support affordable housing.
Josh, let me just stick with the budget for a second. Sure. Because I can't wait to get to politics either, but occasionally.
Well, I just wanted to ask about the housing thing. And basically, do you support affordable housing, Randy? I mean,
I do. And we have just under 20% of every house, every unit in Santa Barbara is affordable by either covenant or deed restriction subsidy or whatever it is. Do we have enough? No. Will we ever have enough? Probably not. It's really hard to build affordable housing in the coastal zone that's not subsidized. You saw the other day where the SFD, the adaptive reuse guidelines that people were pushing for us to take that out of the downtown, and frankly, because it might not get built if we force people to do that kind of thing. So I really don't know, but I do know this is that the money that we are talking about from the budget isn't going to be as impactful as a lot of people think it is. We are going to be looking at the same faces next year. You can mark my words on it and put it in the Josh Molina notes. Looking for more money, because it's just not going to be enough to do what they're talking about doing unless some angel investors come down out of the sky and just say, "Hey, I'm Jason Yardy and I want to backfill this project," or something along those lines. Last point I made from the dais is people like Cottage Hospital and other big employers are constantly looking for opportunities to get in and supply some of their employees from these markets. I don't know if they've been approached or not. I know when Ron Worf was at the Cottage Hospital, he talked a lot about these to these developers about that. I'm sure his replacement is ready to do the same thing. But to come to council and to say, I know this is extraordinary for your general fund budget, but we got to do this. It's a top priority. Everybody wants this. I'm going, no, people also want library hours. They want their parks maintained. We talked about leaving police positions open that we've been trying to fill for years, and Measure I was part of that. I'm sorry, that really is, that's my button pusher right there. I've never, ever, ever in my years in Santa Barbara heard anybody say, "Oh, we got too many cops." Never heard that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, maybe for a couple of weeks in 2020, but
in a couple of meetings, I should say. And that, if you're wondering why I came back, Jerry, you just hit the answer right there.
all right,
Button pusher.
let me just close on the budget and just for our viewers, because all these words get mixed up. We got a deficit and a debt and a shortfall. What we are talking about here is a projected shortfall in the city budget for the fiscal year that begins July 1 and ends June 30th, 2026, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. And somehow it seemed to those of us who were only casual observers of this, from an $800,000 surplus to a $1.2 million shortfall in the space of a week. And I assume that has something to do with the aforementioned tax projections you mentioned, Randy. But just as a taxpayer, I'm out here. Wait a minute, didn't I just vote for a sales tax increase because we had these chronic shortfalls and we were going to take care of all this? It's not 2 minutes later, and here we are again. So I would imagine there's a bit of outrage out there in the community.
Sure there is, and I don't blame the committee one little bit. And I'm the guy. I went out for Measure C in 2017. It was the Randy and Bendy show as we ran around and did these presentations. And I am the only one out of council that went to 100% of these Measure I presentations.
The recent sales tax increase we approved in November.
Right. And here we are. We thought, okay, we've done it. It's been great. We got hit with inflations and the tariffs have not helped, and that involves any of our capital projects that they're just going crazy. And also tax revenues have fallen a little bit. And as having talked to me about State Street about 5,000 times, we've got our foot on the neck of the recovery of State Street right now. And I am, it's not that that's going to solve all our problems, but not help it, by keeping it stagnant for as long as we have.
Well, listen, as long as we're on that, Josh, let's jump in here. I see Israel Sullivan has a new op-ed in the Independent about the great need for everyone to ride a bicycle, which I assume means there must be some progress being made on reopening State Street. Where does that stand?
Well, that's a great question, Jerry. I just met with the DSBIA, that took over the downtown organization yesterday. They are in alignment as property owners. They said we got to get this open, and even people who were strongly resisting opening the street before are now going.
Downtown merchants you're talking about?
Yeah, well, they're downtown property owners, not necessarily their tenants, but the owners themselves.
Okay.
And the people that are, everybody's a stakeholder in State Street because it really is a common public area. However, the people that can't choose to go, it's not very cool, I'm going to go somewhere else. No, these guys, They're like trees. They've got roots in the ground. They own the properties. They've seen businesses being assessed downwards due to some losses. They've got rents that are down a couple or $3 in some cases, almost to 1980s levels in terms of rents. That used to be the most exclusive rental property in the city. And of course, now that belongs to Coast Village Road, and they're doing a bang up job out there. There's tenants that are moving from State Street to Coast Village Road, paying 3 times the rent and happy to do it. So something is, cars by themselves are not the secret sauce, but the stagnation is clearly, it's not doing us any good. So, I would love to see us, personally, I'd like to see it just return to the old configuration, not so much to accommodate cars, but so we don't pay for more and more engineering reports on how to configure it. Number one. Number two is the barricades we use at Farmers Market are ideal. They use them in San Luis Obispo. They open a street and close the street. They do it all over the time, but they don't close streets permanently. They do them for events. They do it for experiments. They're still working on their master plan up there as well. So I think that we have spent a lot of money and a lot of time, and the results, the results speak for themselves. We don't have any results.
Are we making any political progress on this issue or not? Josh, what do you think?
I think we are. I don't want to, get ahead of, what's to come in the next month or so, because it's still kind of developing. But there is a big meeting July 1st where they're going to be talking about sort of the latest recommendations and where things are headed with the State Street master plan. I think it's going to be a close vote, but I also think that it's an election year. And what's different is there's some data going around that is supporting this effort to do something different than what has been done as it relates to.
You're referring to the survey of the property owners, correct?
Well, the property owners. So that was significant because the power left the actual business owners and went to the property owners when the district was formed, the CBID was formed. And no longer is the Downtown Association, those business owners, no longer are they sort of driving the ship. So now it's the property owners, and they're the ones who have voted to say, we want the street open. But there's also a drop in sales tax. Randy's talking about the projected drop in tourism, hotel tax. And I just think it's hilarious that Sarah Clark and, others are trying to vilify people who are moving their cars every 75 minutes because the downtown parking fund is depleting when you actually have told people don't drive downtown. Well, what do you think is going to happen? If you tell them don't drive downtown, of course people are not going to park in the lots. So if you open State Street, I would imagine that would also fix the park to some degree, the parking situation. I don't think it should be reopened all the way. Like, I think I like this idea of certain nights closing it or certain events so that you can have that promenade feel.
Sure.
I think that's very smart. The Downtown Association does great events throughout the year, dancing on the blocks of State Street, and those are hugely popular, and I think those should stay. But this idea, the rest of the time, I mean, if you're down there, there's no one there at nighttime. I mean, unless it's a special event, there's no one there and it's dark. And then during the day, if we film the show downtown right now on State Street, you'd have skateboarders and e-bikers and not like a lot, but just kind of like trickling around. And it just seems like a very large waste of space. That's not to say that Sullivan Israel doesn't have points. Of course, people should ride bikes more. Of course. But how long are we going to say that State Street and the economic vitality that it's working right now when it's clearly has been struggling? And no Music Academy of the West is going to save it. No new film festival is going to save it. These are all good things, but you need to get cars down there, and not everybody wants to ride a skateboard down the middle of State Street.
All right, Mayor, final word to you on that one.
Well, there's a couple of facts going on there. First of all, and Rick Caruso pointed this out, which went down and met with him at his hotel. And he said, "You're out of scale." I go, "What does that mean?" It's something he had said at the Economic Forum. And he goes, your storefronts are too far apart. There's nothing you're going to do in the middle that's going to make those two things relate. He goes, your storefronts are like 80 some feet apart. Mine are like 40. And I've got a street in the middle. I've got the train on track, the train to nowhere, all that. So he goes, that's part of the problem. Number two is I have an Apple store, you have an Apple store, blah, 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 but I have a clean and light and welcoming atmosphere. Right now you don't, and you've got one of the most famous walking streets on the planet still today. Last point is, you know, Sullivan's article said it was the promenade going away. Well, Dave Davis said as much in the last SSAC meeting as we've never had a promenade. The promenade is really the sidewalks. Those big, wide sidewalks were generous for a reason, and that was to accommodate outdoor dining if needed, plus have enough adequate room for people to walk by. And so the idea that we've taken this street from an emergency declaration to a permanent fixture without any kind of planning just goes against all the sense that's gone on for the last, since the 70s in the United States. 90% of these things have failed. And somehow we're that special or it won't fail. Well, I'm sorry, but I think that the results are in, and I think the property owners, Ventura's property owners sued their city for the same reason, unsuccessfully, because they were trying to cite some kind of vehicle code law. It was kind of a photo finish decided by a judge. But the real point was there's a reason why they sued their own city to reopen. So, I'm not worried about a lawsuit per se. I just want, and I don't have to be right. I just want it to be vital. I want it to be successful.
All right. Well, by next solstice of 2026, hopefully Josh and I will be hosting a mayoral debate, and hopefully we won't be discussing this. But
boy, that would be. I would love to have.
Odds are we
will. My life where State Street wasn't part of the conversation.
Hey, I do want to talk about the reelect a little bit, but before we do that, just real quick, can I just get quick answers on two questions? What is the status of this 8-story blockbuster proposed for behind the mission? Who's suing who, and what's going on with that?
Well, the developer, or I don't even know, name wise who it is anymore. I'm not really sure, but they're suing over the last rejection of the incomplete declaration by staff on the application. So that is what the last legal action is, to my knowledge. I think I've got my little cheat sheet here, what's going on with it, but it is. Let's see, where am I?
The city has deemed the application incomplete 4 times.
That's correct.
And the applicant thinks this is a purposeful effort to stall, and they're trying to speed it up. And even though the city doesn't have the power through builder's remedy to say no, they do have the power to tweak it quite a bit. And that's, they're basically saying that.
You mean to exert some local control over planning?
Well, but I tell you, I've talked to staff. There's a woman named Barbara Burkhart who's a lead planner on this, and we are doing things by the numbers. We're not trying to get cute. We're not trying to slow walk something. But the applicant has also gone right up to, they get 90 days to cure every time something like this comes up, and they've gone right up to day 89 before they resubmit. And then we have 30 days to respond to them, as I understand it. So don't quote me. I guess I did just quote it myself, didn't I? Anyway. So they have that leeway to do that. Once the application is in,
can't say don't quote me on Newsmakers.
I know. I'm really kind of teasing myself. But then they have to go through the CEQA process. And as you know, there are legislators in Sacramento that are trying to pull the CEQA process out of these applications. So at the end of the day, there's still a long path to travel on this. I don't know of anyone who thinks this is a good idea. I've not run into that person yet, and so it's a really cruel joke on the people who live in Mission Canyon for a egress for in case of an emergency. Kind of one of my points about State Street, by the way, but I won't go there again. Number two is it's a joke for anybody who thinks about our historical elements and architectural elements at one of our most famous landmarks in the entire city. And number three is it isn't going to supply that much housing if it was done. It'd just be a big monstrosity of an apartment building in the most inappropriate place I can think of.
All right.
So, I think if there's ever going to be a time when I join in on civil disobedience, that might be it. I'll chain myself to the bulldozer along with you two guys.
All right, Randy shows up for, and then the second thing I want to just real quick, the uh, Pharaoh House, or as I like to say, fostering access, resilience, and opportunity, world's worst acronym. But the neighbors have been very unhappy with that. The city's given a 30-day quit notice on it. The director was down, according to Josh's reporting at City Hall this week. Sounded pretty outraged about the whole thing. Can you just give us a status report on that?
I can give you a partial status report because a lot of it's still in process of what we're doing. But yes, we did announce that we were taking our funding and we wanted to end the relationship. With this case, it says SB Act. The basis, the neighbors have been unhappy. Jody House, some of the other neighbors around. Our thing was, and I was part of the discussion with the neighbors prior to launching this project, was that we were going to keep a civil neighborhood. In fact, we may be able to even clean up the neighborhood better because there's going to be all of our service workers are in this one building. So exterior perimeter security, meaning we'd have people out around the blocks as well, was part of the deal. And it was not supposed to become an attractive nuisance. There was not supposed to be a feeding program, which they launched. There was not supposed to be people hanging out in the area, and that was supposed to be mollified by people going out and directing them either in or. But you weren't supposed. It wasn't a day center. It wasn't a hangout. It was a center to direct people to services, to take the place of what we used to do in the parks and in the parking lot and the library, or at least to mollify that while we directed them to where they needed to go. So you could not actually, sorry about that. You could not actually have some place where it's just a hangout. You could get ready for a job interview. You could have a shower and maybe we'll get you some clothes or whatever, but it wasn't supposed to be where you just came for the day or to eat and leave without being part of the program. So,
And Josh, clarify for me, the city administrator is proposing a different, putting aside the vendor for a second, sort of a different approach to it by appointment.
Well, there's some of this, I don't know where the city is at right now because they went into closed session. But initially, Kelly McAdoo had said, from my experience in Hayward, this works better through an appointment process rather than a drop-in process. Because with a drop-in, it becomes sort of a hub of activity. I was there this week on Tuesday after the closed session. I took a picture of Rich Sander, the executive director. It's summer. I brought my 11-year-old daughter, because we like to terrorize our children and bring them on assignments sometimes. And I had to bring her. And within 15 minutes that I was there were, two loud arguments with people who are, appeared to be using the program, shouting at staff of SB Act and the security guards, loud, and very kind of hostile, basically saying they didn't want to be told what to do, kind of stuff. And so, if that's my 15 minutes of being there, if you're a neighbor, you can imagine what's going on. Now, SB Act, of course, says, well, this is what we wanted. We wanted something downtown. We used to have it at Alameda Park, and that was another problem. But now we're managing it, and you're going to have these issues, but look at all the good that we're doing. That's sort of they're saying. So Kelly initially wanted that. I don't know what the city wants to do now because I don't know what they did in closed session. But what I do know is that SB Act says, give us to the end of the year. We're going to fix the problem. They have Beth Collins, attorney, working with them for pro bono. And they're saying, hey, we're implementing new standards and we're going to fix this and we're going to make it better. Of course, the city has, 10, 20% of their funding. They get funding from elsewhere. So it's a funding issue. So that's kind of where it's at. Is the city going to say, let's wait a year? Or is the city going to say, no, the city is leasing this building. Property owner, the city doesn't want to lose this lease because then they got to find something else. So I think they probably want to fix it
Yeah.
ASAP, maybe not wait till December.
So I can't really discuss the details of that because you're asking those are questions. But I will go back to the appointment thing. Appointment is basically a referral, so it doesn't mean you got to call up and say I want to come in at 11 o'clock. It means if a caseworker is out there in the street and they can refer you in. But if you come in and utilize the services, you need to join the program. You can't just say I'm going to go in and get the snack or go to the restroom and then leave. That's not how it's supposed to work. It's not a drop-in day center, nor is it a shelter. So, and we lost a lot of credibility with the neighbors, and that's particularly irritating. And how it gets cured is still kind of up in the air, but our intention is to cure it. And we went to a pretty extreme move, actually, of saying we're done with this. We are the main lessee of the building, and the other service providers are the sub lessees. So it's still up to us to control who, not so much the programming, but how it's run. And it's certainly up to us. And, Commander Payne from the PD is on it. He's meeting with neighbors. He's trying to be over there as much as he can, get his people over there. We're trying to do the right things, but we need, we can't be everywhere. So we need the thing to be run correctly.
All right. Mayor, I want to be respectful of your time. I greatly appreciate it. We got about 10 minutes left. So, let's do what the political hacks who form our audience base come here for, which is let's
Both
talk.
of them? No.
Yeah, both of them. Well, at least all the political consultants. Let's put it that way. Those who make their living from this sort. Josh, let's talk about the real election next year.
Well, Mayor, I've mouthed off a couple times on Jerry's show, sort of about, your reelection.
Fortunately, Randy doesn't watch the show except when he's on it, so he hasn't heard it.
About your reelection bid, and I sort of pontificated that there were more pockets of the community that were sort of saying, hey, they're kind of unhappy with Randy. So, there's a lot of talk about what's going to happen in the mayor's race. I guess the first question is, are you planning to run for reelection? I've heard rumors that you may have a different plan in mind. What's going through your head right now?
No, I'm planning on running.
Okay. So I had heard, well, maybe Eric wants to run and you kind of endorse him, support him, that sort of thing. There's a lot going on. There's a 4-3 now. You're sort of in the minority side of fiscal conservative things on the council. Are you feeling strong, threatened? Are you worried? You got in through an appointment, and then you just started running.
Well, not into the mayor's race.
Well, yeah, through city council, right? How are you feeling right now with what's going on with, you see signs like that. You see what's going on with State Street. People try to paint you as a Trumpster or being conservative. And we know that there's a lot of energy around anti-conservatism right now. Rightfully so, I shall say, when it comes to Donald Trump. But how are you feeling right now when it comes to the reelection?
Donald Trump is not a conservative.
Yeah, I was just gonna make that point.
Okay.
Donald Trump is not any of that definition at all. But and I'm not a Trump fan, but that's really not my concern. My concern is recognizing what this job is and what it's not. This job is about service. It's not about politics. It's not about outside ideologies. I have political opinions and ideologies that are not part of this job. And in fact, what I really enjoy doing is being out in the community, talking to neighborhood groups, talking to schools, doing that kind of thing, as opposed to battling back and forth about ideologies in this room. I'm not happy with some of the things that went on in the budget. I'm not happy with the whole State Street thing. I'm not very pleased with the project labor agreement that still, has proven its worth in the library project. Yeah. So all these things, and yeah, I've heard every Lone Ranger joke in the books, but I still have a real passion about the city, and I have a real passion about its future. I have no political future. That's all behind me now. I have no aspirations to do anything else, but I think it's really important to understand what our job is, and I'm not so sure that's very clear for a lot of folks. And of course, people well, as mayor, X, Y, and Z, I go, as mayor, I'm exactly one vote. I think that should be pretty clear by now. I get to, to run the meeting and cut a few ribbons, but my vote's the same as everyone else's up there. What other people's plans are, the dynamic change with district elections. We all know that. And not that, I've got bad colleagues. That's not the case. But it does confuse people. It balkanizes the city. Well, my district says this, or we don't govern by districts. We govern at large, all of us, no matter how we got elected. And I don't think that's always clear for a lot of folks. And so there's a lot of influence from outside groups that is stronger than it would normally be if everybody were elected at large. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking with it.
Yeah, yes, you're one of 7 votes. That's correct. And every 4 years we all write the story that says, the mayor doesn't really have much power. But at this point in history, you are the one and only city official who is elected citywide.
Correct.
Which means you're hearing from everyone, whereas someone famously said, you can get elected by your book club in a couple of these other districts, and the mayor runs the meetings. That's a big deal, helping set the agenda with the city administrator. So I've always argued that I think the mayor is, first among equals and does play an important role. That said, 3 of your colleagues are going to be termed out next year. And I would put them in order of possibility that they will run against you as 1, Kristen Sneddon, 2, Eric Friedman, or 2, Megan Harmon, 3, Eric Friedman. Do you agree with that ranking?
I don't think Megan would do that. She,
You put her at 3.
I don't think she would run for mayor. Megan can make a ton of dough doing what she does as an attorney. She's got 3 beautiful children, and I told her that I'd be talking to her mother about this because she's not happy with that idea either. But no, I think Megan's going to be out of city politics once this happens. She's still going to be the chair of the Coastal Commission, and she's still, like I said, she's got a very powerful career. Her husband's become a very successful deputy DA up in the North County, and likes the job. His boss loves him, and so there's a lot of reasons why she shouldn't want to do this. And for me, like I said, I just have a passion for the city. I don't have a political axe to grind. Are people unhappy? Yeah, I join them, and I'm unhappy with the stagnation on State Street. I'm unhappy with going out and asking for taxes and all of a sudden spending a lot of reserves and not having any money for the next couple of years. We finally restored library hours. We finally got all these positions backfilling, and now we're looking at, here we go again. Are we going to be looking at the next after school program going away? I don't know. We're not.
Well, Mayor, in his rants that Josh previously referenced, he explained that you would lose largely because because of the housing issue, because you're so crinkly.
Well, let me just frame that, Jerry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I foresee a very vicious election cycle. If Kristen Sneddon decides to run for mayor, she's going to have the pro rent stabilization / rent control. She's going to have the affordable housing people. She's going to have the keep State Street closed.
Well, she'd most likely have the Democratic Party, wouldn't she?
She'll probably get the she would get the Dem endorsement, no doubt. And that's some heft, right? And Sneddon she's a local, and she grew up here, and she's very well liked in San Roque. And so, probably otherwise, she's a teacher. That's a very formidable challenge. So I'm not saying like who should win, but I'm saying that would be the stiffest challenge you faced. And do you think about that? Do you lose sleep about that? Do you think, how do I combat that? Because that would be new for you, as far as that big of a challenge.
My biggest Achilles heel is my lack of political strategy. I'm not a strategist. I'm a kind of an ad hoc line item person. And like I say, I like to go back to my old analogy, being the town busboy. I'm the one that goes and provides service. Your street light doesn't work, I happen to know the street light guy. Those kind of things, which I think is not a global way of thinking. I get that, but this isn't a global job. This job is very specific to the city. So when you talk about things like rent control and all these things, that is illogical in terms of going forward and providing the kind of housing that's needed. And there are limits. I mean, to build in the coastal zone is a very expensive proposition. It just is. The lieutenant governor told me personally, because she was a developer with her father up in Sacramento. She goes, the private sector can't build affordable housing in the coastal zone. It just doesn't work. And I go, no, I get it. It needs to be subsidized. And where does that subsidy come from? The general fund does not have the
Affordable housing,
shoulders.
you mean so-called, they can't build affordable housing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And when you say for like workforce housing, we can
Right.
get tax credit financing. It does the lowest of the low income folks. With the one effort we're going to put towards workforce housing is going to be when we bought the police annex building behind the police station. And then when we move the police department over to the Coda lot, we'll have that whole property to use potentially for some workforce housing. Are we going to be able to solve it? Are we going to be able to meet the RENA numbers? Those are great questions. And I don't know. While I won't stand in the way of things, I'm also not going to sell the farm to provide a couple of projects. I mean, if out of that money comes 30 or 40 new units, because it costs $1 million a unit to build affordable housing. Okay, that's great, but it's not gonna set like the world on fire. Not gonna even move the needle much. And that's the part that frustrates me. It sounds great on the soundbite. It sounds, this is what I'm for, but the practical application of the boots on the ground is really not significant. And that's, I fear for the rest of the things we try to build in the city, trying to get the place paved, cleaned, parks that are really nice for our children to play in. The lowest income people need those public services the most. And do they need housing? Yeah, but we gotta stay in our lane and do what we can to provide the most accessible quality of life day to day that we can do. Then that's our job.
Yeah, we're sort of avoiding the elephant in the room here on these 4-3 votes. I guess I got to ask you, Mayor, what's it like? Compare and contrast Alejandra Gutierrez and Wendy Santa Maria in the
Well, I mean, they both are very dynamic, and I like them both actually. So they're, yeah, but Wendy came in, of course, on the rent control horse. That's what the horse she rode in on. She's not shy about that, and she's got support from those elements like the Santa Barbara Tenants Union and Cause and whatnot. They're boosting that up. Not the first candidate to be there and whatnot. So what's going to happen? What's going to be the role? Right now, they've got 4 people on that side of the vote because they've got Oscar joining in with them too. Okay, bully for them, but is that really going to be what's going to make us successful in the long run? I don't believe it is. If you listen to economic forecasters and whatnot, that and people that have experience, like Peter Rupert, for example, the rent control doesn't work. It hasn't worked anywhere. Why would it work here? I spoke with the attorneys in Santa Monica. I ran them down to Long Beach, and they're going, yeah, we spend $6 million a year on just their rental registry. They have a 24-person board that goes out, and they're the exact same size city we are population-wise. You got a higher tax base because they got different kinds of entities, but they go, people take those rent control apartments, they hold on to them, they sublease them, and there's almost no way to control that. I know 2 people that have rent control apartments in Santa Monica that have sublet them out to other people.
All right. Josh, last question.
Oh, I'm just fascinated by the politics of it and what's going on. So, Mayor, we've talked a lot about Megan Harmon has talked a lot about her respect for you. If you run for mayor and a Democrat, like Kristen runs, who do you think she's going to endorse? Is she going to stick by you, or is she going to go with what the party wants?
I think she'll duck for cover and not be involved at all. I really don't know. What's strange about me is I really can't get worked up about it. I'm just going to do my job. I'm going to run. I'll run the best campaign I can. And if the cards don't fall my way, the cards don't fall my way. I can't say anything more than that because I just really want the city to thrive. I just don't think we've made progress in these last few years. And of course, I've been at the helm. I got to own part of it. but I've gotten a lot of pushback. I've been on the losing end of a lot of votes, and I think it's kind of sad. Not that everybody's got to agree with me, but I just am not seeing the results positively of what we've got going. I'll go back to the project labor agreement and State Street as two prime examples. We're really hurting on both areas, and yet here we are. So we've done some good things. I mean, we've gotten some. Well, the Faro Center was one of the good things, but we'll get back to that. That'll happen again. Um, but there's, it's just I would like to focus on the positive and going forward. We've got capital projects that have come to light. We finally got the underpass done at State Street, which is a fabulous thing. Public Works has been doing great. We've been paving a lot of roads. We got the police station has finally broken ground. Library Plaza is fabulous. So some capital things have gone really, really well. I've been trying to get involved in neighborhood groups more and more, as much as they, will meet. But and we're finally getting our police department back up to speed. That's why I was so discouraged about hearing people even consider the idea of not filling positions in order to somehow fund this budget thing. So
I got a question for you, Jerry. Sorry, I should have asked it a second ago. You have a lot of department head openings right now in the city of Santa Barbara. And my sources who I talk to in various departments, morale's been kind of low, kind of weak. And what is it? What's going on? Why are we seeing, public works, so many different, such turnover, people just leaving, top planners just getting up and leaving and taking other jobs? Does this have to do with just Kelly's new vision, as you have with the new city administrator, or
I
what's
think it's
going on?
probably they're sick of dealing with you, Josh. But anyway, go ahead.
well, Kelly's opened up a lot of boxes, and a lot of it is why we brought her in, because we needed fresh eyes from the outside. And not to disparage anybody that was administrator in the past at all, but it was time for a fresh look. And so what she's doing is she's actually, rather than going right out and getting a new public works director, Brian DeMoore him in the interim, she's bringing it closer into her so she can really understand it. Same with community development. A lot of times we lose people kind of because they're driving past a job in some other, in their neighborhood, and somebody makes them an offer. Our people are very attractive to people out there, and let's face it, it is expensive to live here. And when you can have a 3-2 somewhere, and I show you the keys to a condo, you're going, yeah, thanks. So that's part of it. Our living expense is one of the things. I'll take a little bit of issue with the blanket statement the morale is down. I don't think so. Now, that being said, we're in the middle of our bargaining sessions with our different labor groups, so that's how that always presents. And that class and comp study is also going to produce some expensive results. That's another hazard going forward. We budgeted for most of it, I think, but now that we've blown up the budget, we'll have to see how we do there. So you got to remember, when I first got into office, we had a lot of positions held open because we were just at the end of the Great Recession. We had to go to the Flex Fridays, which we still held on to. We also furloughed a lot of people. So I've seen the ups and downs of this. And I also think that in general, the chaos that we have from DC on down is everybody's cranky. I mean, just in general, people that are driving, there's this angst. There's this angst.
Boy, that's true.
And I see it everywhere, and I see the lack of rules that we went through in COVID. I think people are still it's still kind of Wild West out there. Well, I don't care if it's a sign ordinance or riding a bike, doing a wheelie down the middle of the freeway, whatever it is you're doing. It's like it just became very cavalier. So my little mantra's been putting the genie back in the bottle. I think it's been really hard. And I think people got used to this kind of way of doing things, but it's not been a positive in terms of our societal decorum and our cooperation. I think we've got a ways to go, and it's got to start with leadership.
I know the morale's down in the library. I know you got nothing to say about that, Randy.
I heard
Morale's down in the library.
Well, the biggest mystery that I've never been able to figure out is, how you pay off the library director, gets this big settlement, and we never know exactly, what happened. So I guess I'm taking issue with the fact that you don't think morale is down when, I mean, it's undeniable. You don't have people just walking up and taking jobs elsewhere, good jobs, high paying jobs, when they're feeling like people at the top are squeezing and taking too much control over what they do day to day.
Well, I think you want to talk about the library. You need to talk to Friedman because he's still our library liaison. But I know Brandon Boudet has been the interim librarian, and I know that the library board has been tickled pink. So
Things are much better now. Yeah, that's true.
yeah, I mean, there was a time. Yeah, you're right, and then we had a very high turnover rate before. And I can't get into too many details about the former director, but that was when that happened. So I think most people are thinking very positively. So you need to refresh those notes, big guy, and get back out there and talk to some of those
Josh,
boys in the
Josh was
library.
just projecting about his own workplace. All
Well,
right.
things are better now, but we had that whole situation
We
where
did, but
tell the
that's
public
in the
what's going
past.
on. Yeah.
And the thing so what's going on is things are improving greatly. And a lot of it is due to Kelly's leadership and Kelly's ability to pull these different people into her office and bring Tess Harris, who is the main planner for State Street, put her in the office right next to her to really try to drive this thing home and quit this stagnation that we've had for so long. Brandon's knocking it out of the park at the library. And frankly, I think Brian DeMoore at Public Works has been a real positive and very much more able to communicate with the public in terms of, because the public is going, why the heck are you tearing up the street again and blah, blah, blah. So those answers are easier to get for the public. Are we still understaffed in some positions? Yes, we are. But as far as going out and hiring, the high priced, kind of department heads we need and all that, we really are trying to re-understand. We realign the org chart, which you saw during the budget. So all those things are coming into place. So I think, Kelly's working hard on it. And I think, that's one reason why I was so disappointed in the budget thing, because when these people put together a budget, it's Keith E. Martini burning the midnight oil for 3 months, getting this thing together. So that's why I'm a little chippy about the budget and the way that turned out this year.
All right, let's leave it there. You can hear the second 3-hour segment of this on Josh's podcast. Mayor,
We already got to say anything about Nick Welsh. I thought we could pick on Nick a bit today.
We can do that. Yeah, we that'll be, it would take much more than 3 hours. But Mayor Randy Rowse, we always appreciate your availability, your accessibility. That's the best thing about your morality is you come on our show. So thanks again for your time. Thanks for what you do, Josh. Thank you as always, and we'll see you on the other side. Thank you all for watching.
All right, thank you.